I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Miami Dolphins fans out there, Dolphin Nation, welcome to the first off-season episode of Larry K, live with Larry K on the Phin-Addict Fury channel. I am your host, Larry K. We got a lot going on in the Dolphins world, right? The last time you saw me, I was angry, I was flipping out, I had my winter hat on, and the Dolphins were letting all of their free agents go. All their storied players that we all love so much, they were all going to a side hotline. What up, my bro? If you guys haven't done so yet, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, click subscribe, become a member, and join just like to a side there. There's exclusives. There's all kinds of other perks. We are back for the off season. I'll be trying to do this show probably every other week or so, unless there's some big news. But I will be here talking to you guys about Dolphins football, what's going on, what we can expect, et cetera, et cetera. So last time we talked, we were pretty upset about letting key players go that we thought the Dolphins would make some attempt to keep. Christian Wilkins obviously got a big deal with the Vegas Raiders. That's a kind of, team that needs a spark. They need something to get the fans excited. They're really kind of in limbo. There's not a lot going for them. They're not going to be a contender this year. I don't think there's a ton of expectation, but they need something to keep them excited. On the defensive side of the ball, you obviously got the guy on the offensive side of the ball. So he goes there. You lose Xavier Howard, which was expected to be a cap casualty. Michelle, thanks. Really appreciate it a lot. And I'll be live as much as I can during this offseason. I told you guys I wasn't going to leave you. We want to keep the channel rolling. Make sure you click that like button, get the algorithm up. Click that subscribe button. Let's talk about kind of where the Dolphins are as we're about a week or two into free agency here. So Xavier Howard's going to go. He was kind of past his prime. The expense was a bit much for the Dolphins. You thought that they had been trying to draft his replacement for some time. But when you see guys like Christian Wilkins go, you see guys like Robert Hunt go, and then you even see Brandon Jones go. You see Elliott go. You see these guys go, and it seems like, wow, what are we doing here? All of our homegrown talent is leaving the building, and, it looks like we're kind of selling the farm. And then you go into the second week of free agency or the next couple days, and you see the Miami Dolphins kind of go on a spree of free agent signings. And I think it's important to discuss, what are the Dolphins doing? What is the plan here? Why are they doing what they're doing? And we could talk about that, right? So I think it's a risk reward. Nene, what's good? Another member in the building. What's up, Nene? Make sure you guys click subscribe. Make sure you click the like button. And if you haven't become a member yet, make sure you check out the join options, become a member, support the channel, keep us rolling. We got Shake Money on Thursdays within the blender. We have me. We have the Larry, Lucci, G and Shake show during the season. We got a lot of coverage for you guys. We are a different channel with a different perspective, a whole different vibe, a whole different speed, and we're happy to be here with you. So continue to support the channel if you want more good content from us. But look, so the Dolphins go out. They let a lot of these players go, and then they go out and sign a bunch of other guys. And, I noticed a couple things about the way that this free agency has gone, right? The first thing that hit me that I wasn't a huge fan of, and I'm still unsure about how I feel about it, is the overhaul on this team seems to be focusing and emphasizing overhauling the defensive side of the ball. And I'm not really comfortable with the amount of overhaul on the defensive side of the ball, because whenever the Miami Dolphins start telling us, hey, look over here, look what we're doing, it usually is some kind of distraction from the real problems, right? So they fire the defensive coordinator last year. So Vic Fangio's gone. They clean out his entire staff, even some fan favorites. In the, Sam Madison, Campanelli, these guys are gone. And they bring in an entirely new defensive staff. And with an entirely new defensive staff comes an entirely new defensive philosophy, which then necessitates overhauling the personnel because you got to get personnel that fit your scheme. And the Dolphins seem so focused on overhauling the entire defensive side of the ball. And there's a few ways to look at that, right? My first reaction to them overhauling the defensive side of the ball is, what the hell are you doing? At the end of the season, when we needed the team to come through the most for playoff position, for, in the playoffs, to finally see through what the goal was, which was getting us finally over the hump. When we're in the throes of that part of the season, the defense is down to its last leg, all of these injuries, all of these, adversities, and the defense is still coming through and playing as hard as they can, and the offense is absolutely laying an egg and an egg and an egg. And so it's a little interesting. And what's up, Cap, my dude, MJW, we got Nene, Wheelchair Man John, my dude. What's up, everybody? Make sure you click that like button on the way in. Click that subscribe button on the way in and the way out. Click that join membership button. Let's go. We're here talking Fins. So my first reaction is, wow, they're overhauling the entire defense when they really need to be looking at the offense. And that kind of bothers me because I'm like, what are you going to do about this offense that looked really flashy in the beginning of the season, but towards the end of the season, completely laid an egg and didn't do anything, while the defense is playing their asses off, holding formidable teams to respectable point totals. But the other way to look at it is, where is the salary that's going to be paid out on this team? And where can you make up that salary? And how can you counteract that salary that's going to cost you a ton of money? We were going to be in cap hell this season and this offseason unless we shedded some contracts, unless we shedded some money and some expenditure on the team. Paul Foster, my dude from the UK, what's up, my bro? So we had to shed money somewhere. And I think the other way to look at what's going on when we lost a bunch of guys was these guys are getting overpaid elsewhere. Now, there's some guys who you may say, well, even if it's more money than we wanted to spend, even if it's more money than we would have loved to see, even if it's a bit further than our comfort zone. And Nene, I thought you meant wasn't. I was making sure. But even if it's a bit out of our comfort zone, we should maybe reach a little bit and pay this guy because he's a homegrown guy. But then there were some guys that are just, the amount of money was so much that there's no way that we could have afforded to keep them, right? You look at a Christian Wilkins, and look, the guy is an absolute beast. He's a culture guy. He's homegrown. We drafted him. I know everybody wants to, quote Sealer's stats and say Sealer was more productive, but some of Sealer's productivity comes from Christian Wilkins and comes from playing next to a guy like that. And I see what you're saying, Cap, and that's where I'm going in a minute here. Some of these guys it hurt to lose. And Nene mentions AVG, Andrew Van Ginkel. I think that probably is one of the most painful ones because we could have probably afforded somewhere in the ballpark of what Minnesota was paying him. It was a fair deal. We really needed a guy like that who is a high energy, high motor guy who's willing to step up for our injured pass rushers. It would have been nice to have a guy like that continue to step up. I don't know how much of AVG going to the Vikings had to do with his personal choice. You got to remember AVG is a North Dakota guy or a South Dakota guy. I forget which state, but he's a Dakota guy, and he's going to Minnesota. He actually said he's coming home in his post. So I know we all love South Florida. The taxes are great. The weather is great. But at the end of the day, some of these guys, South Florida is not necessarily their be-all, end-all destination. So I don't know how much of AVG really went into how much of his own decision really went into it. Adam, what up, my brother? Adam Sadowski, another member, my dude. Make sure you join and become a member. Make sure you click subscribe, guys. Make sure you click like. We got members in here all day. We're out here kicking it on a Monday afternoon talking about Finn's free agency. So here's my thing, though, okay? There was a definite philosophy at play here with the Miami Dolphins front office. And if you look at what occurred, you see that the Miami Dolphins essentially traded high-priced long-term players for short-term deal players who have a lot of hunger, something to prove, many of whom are on the back leg of their career. And I think for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it's because Greer was instructed to do so by Ross or, you know, whether he's just being responsible. I don't know what the case is, but it looks to me like the Miami Dolphins are setting up for another quick load up, shoot their shot, try to win a chip this year, and if not, everybody's gone, or a substantial portion of the team is gone, a substantial portion of the salaries are gone, and the team is ready to conduct a bigger rebuild, or at least continue roster turnover by way of the draft as opposed to free agency. If the Dolphins wanted to continue to double down on their current philosophies and personnel groupings, they would have signed guys to longer deals. They would have signed younger guys. They would have kept some of their more coveted players at higher premiums. But what the Dolphins are doing is loading up for 1 year and then allowing themselves to reset once again after this year. I get the impression that if it doesn't work out this year with this regime and this iteration of the team, the Dolphins are preparing themselves to be able to simply turn around and pivot and just leave and not continue down this road anymore, whether that means a new coach, whether that means an entire new, defensive staff again, whether the front office is looking to replace Greer, whatever it may be. And Carlos, thank you very much, my brother, for the first super chat of the day. First super chat on my solo show for the offseason. It's much appreciated. Much love to you, Carlos, sir. He said AVG had planned to leave. He bought a house in Minnesota. And Carlos, I appreciate that because I was kind of alluding to that. It seemed to me like AVG was ready to go the previous year until Fangio convinced him to come back. He's from up north. He's from up there. He might have grown up a Vikings fan for all I know. And I think it seemed like he was kind of anxious and happy to go home. So I don't think there's much we could have done with AVG. And if that's the case, then you really can't blame the front office. If that's the case, then you really can't blame the Dolphins, because if he wanted to go home, he wanted to go home, and it is what it is. But let's take a look at, who we brought in. After losing, guys that I really liked. I liked Brandon Jones. I loved Christian Wilkins. I thought Jerome Baker was a decent piece, but we're going to talk about him in a second. There's moves I love, there's moves I don't love, and there's risk reward to all of this. But I think we should maintain what I'm seeing as the philosophy here from the front office is we're loading up for another shoot your shot year this year. And we're going to do it with a different defensive philosophy. We're going to do it with a defense that we want to make a little less finesse and a little more hard-nosed and a little more of a bully defense. And we are going to try to shoot our shot. And if we do not succeed in shooting our shot, we are going to completely retool, and we may see big changes after this year. That's what I'm seeing based on the moves that we made. Now, some moves I love, some moves I don't love as much. And you can have your own opinion as to whether you agree with this philosophy or you don't agree with this philosophy. But they're showing you what they're doing is they're going to make a short pivot, a soft reset, reload to go all out this 1 year. And then if they don't win, they're going to be free to make a bunch of more moves because these salaries and these deals are very short-term deals. Okay, but what I'm very curious about, and we'll get to it in a minute, is the offensive side of the ball. They restructured a bunch of guys on defense, Ramsey. They restructured guys on offense. They're freeing up cap space. But the offense down the stretch was the problem. And I think it's going to be interesting to take a look at what they do with the offense and how they change, because on the one hand, you say, wow, the offense let us down. We're going to need to do something on the offensive side of the ball in order to get us over the hump. But on the other side of the coin, you have your quarterback. You're not moving on from Tua. We've discussed that so many times. You have your premier wide receivers. You're not moving on from them. You have a line, although losing Hunt is pretty serious. And quite frankly, losing Connor, if he doesn't come back, and even if he does or whatever's going on with him, he's got his injury, that's not great. We bring in a center. We'll talk about that in a minute. You restructure Teron Armstead. Teron Armstead's coming back. But on the one hand, what's the only thing he could really do with a team that has already kind of invested in and solidified their offense? Even though the defense carried them at the end, the defense is still hobbling into next year. And you still have some old contracts like an Xavier Howard. You have some old blood like a Baker, who was never really great but was just serviceable. I mean, the only thing you can really do is try to revamp, retool your defense to have them come out swinging a little bit better early in the year this year. You know your offense is going to be clicking on all cylinders in September, October. That's the MO of this quarterback. That's the MO of this coach. That's the MO of this entire team, okay? You know that the offense is going to come out firing on all cylinders early in the year. Maybe if the defense is firing on all cylinders earlier in the year too, you could bank a bunch of wins so that when inevitably, and I know you guys don't want to believe this, but inevitably at the end of the year, this offense is going to struggle again. And it happens because guys get banged up. It happens because the quarterback struggles at the end of the year consistently, and we don't know for sure why. The weather is a factor. And teams and defenses also start to get a lot of film and figure out what the Dolphins are doing offensively, schematically. And I tend to think that Mike McDaniel struggles a bit adjusting on the fly, whether it's in game or in season. And so you're going to want to bank as many wins as you can early in the season and maybe retooling the defense to start quicker. Because remember, last year, the defense started off slow. And then this coming year, with Phillips and Chubb out in the beginning of the year, you're going to be struggling in the beginning of the year unless you retool that defense. So on the one hand, really the only thing you can do is retool the defense when you've said you're dedicated to the guys on offense. What's up, my brother? What's going on, King Mill, my Jersey dude, everybody in the chat? We're getting to all the points you want to get to. Don't worry. Super Chat's also open like Carlos hit if you want to make your point up to the front of the line. So on the one hand, you see why they're doing what they're doing. But on the other hand, I don't know that you can just roll with the offense we have and pretend it's all good and go out and sign the guys you sign and act like we're fine, especially along the offensive line. You lose arguably your best interior lineman in Hunt. You re-sign Jones, who is serviceable, but by no means one of the better guys. You go out and you get Wynn. You re-sign Wynn. Now, Wynn was very good while he played. But as usual, we're going to go through this list of free agents that we signed. There's a lot of guys on here that have injury problems. There's a lot of guys on here that have questions about their health, questions about their consistency, questions about their age. And at times that pays off because at times you're getting guys on prove-it contracts. They want to prove themselves, and you're going to get them to go out there and give it their all on their one-shot season. On the other hand, if guys go down again and guys aren't available, then you're once again kicking the can down the road again. And whether it's Wynn and whether it's some of these other guys, whether it's Armstead, these guys are all injury prone. And we're going with discounted players who are released from other teams, who are looking to prove themselves, who are older, who are injury prone, because we can get them on discounted deals for 1 year, and then we can pivot and move on. Now, some guys, like I said, a Christian Wilkins, maybe that's just too damn much money for us to commit to. Understandable. But a guy, like a decent guy like a Baker, or maybe you pay AVG a little bit extra of a premium to get him to stay in Miami or whatever else the case may be, maybe you can make that up somewhere. But maybe there was really not a lot of room for Grier to do much. When you can't afford Wilkins, you got to replace him with defensive tackle by committee, and that's what we're looking to do. So let's go through these signings. So Jordan Poyer, safety, as we are very familiar with him, he's a Buffalo Bill. He was a Buffalo Bill for several years. He lives in South Florida in the offseason, as a lot of players do. Quite frankly, I'm sick of hearing about all the guys that live in South Florida in the offseason. A bunch of people live in South Florida. A bunch of guys up here in Newark have houses in South Florida. Every friggin' buddy has houses in South Florida, whatever. But so it doesn't really matter that he has a house in South Florida. But nonetheless, Poyer is a signing for us. So, look, we lose Brandon Jones. We need somebody to pair with Javon Holland. Holland has been good. Holland's coming up on a contract year, and we're going to see what's going to happen with Holland. And Nene, the member Nene, says, Grier should have traded Wilkins or the tag to get something back. I agree wholeheartedly. That's one thing I really don't understand. I don't care if Wilkins is personally opposed to the tag or whatever else. Tag the guy and trade and get an asset. And if you don't get an asset, this is one thing I don't understand. If you're loading up for a 1-year shoot your shot year and you're pivoting off everybody next year anyway, why the hell wouldn't you tag a Wilkins? Because it's a 1-year rental anyway. Tag a Wilkins, do that shoot your shot year, and then he's walking anyway in a year. Or if you get to the trade deadline and you're not winning and it doesn't look like you're going to shoot your shot, then trade him for pieces. Maybe trade him to a team that's willing to sign him long term and get at least something for him. Then again, we're going to get the compensatory pick. So it's not like we're completely empty-handed. And had we moved him at the trade deadline and it wasn't a sure thing that he would get a long-term deal, maybe we would only get a pick in compensation anyway. So it's an interesting conversation to have. But Poyer signs a 1-year deal. Look, he's 33 years old. He's had some injuries over the past 2 years, but he's played. He's a player. Played 16 games in 2023, 12 games in 2022. I like Poyer. I think he's got a lot to prove. I think a guy like Poyer is indicative of what I think they're trying to do with this defense. What they're trying to do for this defense is they're trying to bring a little bit more hunger, physicality, a little bit more of that dog into this defense to counteract what is largely perceived as a finesse offense and a finesse team. And when you're bringing a guy who's from the Baltimore Ravens school of defense, and then you're signing a guy like Poyer, I think it's obvious and it's evident that the Dolphins are trying their best to bring in this physicality, this toughness, this hard-nosed beast approach to the defense. And I think despite the fact that the defense wasn't the problem last year and really probably wasn't even the problem the year before, I think it still is worth trying to get a little tougher on the defensive side of the ball. And you know what? Maybe the offensive players feed off a little bit of that physicality. Maybe that clashing in practice, maybe that physicality on the field, maybe that opportune defense that creates turnovers, maybe that feeds into the offense. And again, Banks wins early in the season. I think that makes some sense. So I like the Poyer signing. He's an older guy. It's not like he's going to be a long-term solution. But at the end of the day, Holland is coming up on the end of his contract. Poyer's on a 1-year deal. Elliott was getting up there anyway. It wasn't like he was a spring chicken per se. So why not go out and get a Poyer? A Brandon Jones was a good player who I like, but he wasn't a spring chicken either. He was mid-career type guy. Good player, tough player, but ran into his home players quite a bit. If he got a deal elsewhere, there's nothing wrong with bringing in a Poyer on a 1-year deal. I actually really like the Poyer signing. Shaq Barrett, former Buccaneer, again, a 1-year deal. This one worth $9 million. He's a pass rusher. He's basically replacing Andrew Van Ginkel. And Van Ginkel was a 2-year deal when he went to Minnesota. This is a 1-year deal worth about the same amount of money. So it's really a direct replacement for Van Ginkel. This is where so if I go back to Carlos's comment earlier, if Grier had no choice because AVG just wanted to leave South Florida and wanted to go home, then you can't really blame Greer for going and getting Shaq Barrett as a replacement for Van Gink to start the season and then be the third pass rusher once Chubb and Phillips get back. Because what are his options? This is a serviceable guy as any if you're going to lose Van Ginkel regardless. On the other hand, if it would have taken an extra $1 million or an extra couple bucks in a bonus or an extra year to one-up Minnesota to keep Van Ginkel and convince AVG to stay in South Florida instead of going home, and you chose to be prudent, or you chose, to be shrewd, or whatever you want to call it, and you simply said, I just have a hard line in the sand. I'm not going to pay a premium to convince AVG not to go home, but to stay in South Florida. And I'm cool with taking Shaq Barrett on a 1-year, $9 million deal instead of AVG. Then I wouldn't have done that. I would have paid AVG a little bit more, given AVG a little bit more what he wanted to get him to stay, because I don't think that giving up a long-term, high-motor, consistently productive, good culture guy like AVG and replacing him with a guy like Shaq Barrett, who was very productive the first few seasons of his career, but has fallen off a little bit as of recent, is the best move. But we don't know what went on there. So if AVG was a no-go, or he was demanding way too much to stay in Miami, then maybe the Shaq Barrett thing's the only thing you could really do. Shake, what's up, my brother? Great to see you. Make sure you guys check out In the Blender with Shake on Thursdays. Great to see you too, my brother. So, Barrett was 33rd best at pressures last season, which isn't great at all. 10% of his pass rushes generated pressures. It's a little bit less than AVG, which was 10.7%. He's AVG's replacement. Love it or hate it. And I think we all like AVG because he's a type of guy you could really fall in love with as a fan. Barrett, if he can turn it up because he's on a 1-year deal and he's hungry and he wants to keep proving himself and he wants to try to win significantly this year, and he, wants to get a longer term contract with somebody, then it's a okay trade-off. I think AVG is probably the younger, better, higher motor guy. And Ronnie, to answer your question, AVG had a 10.7% pressure percentage on his pass rushes, whereas Shaq had a 10% pressure percentage on his pass rushes. So they're very close as far as pass rushing. But I think that AVG has the higher upside because he's younger, he's a team guy, he's still very hungry, and he's been consistently productive, whereas Barrett has fallen off in the last couple of years. But like I said, it's kind of I wouldn't say even trade-off. I think AVG is a little better, but that's not going to make or break you. And again, if AVG wanted to go home, back to the north, no matter what, then there was no saving it. If Greer could have saved AVG by paying him a little more than he paid Shaq Barrett because he's paying him $9 million, I would have stuck with AVG, and that's something we are not going to know right now. I suspect Greer drew a hard line in the sand, and AVG wanted to go to Minnesota because he wanted to go home. And AVG probably said, this is what it's going to take to keep me here. And Greer said, thanks, but no thanks. And I don't think I agree with that. But it is what it is. We have Shaq Barrett, and it's not the end of the world compared to AVG, even though it's not what I think many of us would have preferred. Phil, another member, what's up, my brother? Says, welcome back, Larry. I'm a little late, but I'm really looking forward to the revamped linebacker corp to see what the Weaver system that appears to feature the linebacker corp looks like. And we're going to get to that, Phil, so I appreciate that. I think we are trying to be a little more hard-nosed and trying to have linebackers that can play off the ball and can hit hard, cover gaps, catch up to guys in the second level, and prevent these offenses from this bend but don't break thing, which I think we're all sick of seeing. So I'd like to see that happen. And Nene, yeah, I mean that is a valid point. I don't think it seemed like AVG, and once you're settled anywhere, whether it's home or not, you probably want to try to stay if you can. I don't think AVG was saying no matter what you offer me, I'm going to go home. I think he could have been kept, and I think Greer put a line in the sand, and I think it is what it is. So then Jonnu Smith, tight end. When we're talking about offense, there were some offensive moves, not necessarily a ton. 2-year deal worth up to $10 million. And, I like the signing. Is it groundbreaking? No. Is it an upgrade for a pass catcher in a system that doesn't necessarily even use tight ends that much as pass catchers anyway? Yes. He had some unproductive seasons early on after his big contract, but he made up for it with a good performance in 2023. I like the signing of Smith. I don't think there's anything not to like about the signing of Smith. It's a decent money amount. It's 2 years, and it's a place of need. It's a tight end that can block and catch the ball. If you keep Smythe too, now you have 2 guys that can get their hands on the ball, make a play when you need it, be a safety blanket, add some size and some toughness to the passing game that is really predominantly dominated by little fast guys. I think the Jonnu Smith was a good signing. And there's not a lot to dislike about the signing, quite frankly. Fills a position of need with a guy who's formidable. I think that was a good signing. I think most people would agree. Jordan Brooks, linebacker. Now, this is the big deal here, and this is to Phil's point. This is the big signing here. You got a 3-year, $30 million deal. So that's $10 million a season. This is This is a concerted decision by the Miami Dolphins to upgrade or switch out philosophically and play style wise their core linebacker in the Weaver system. This was to say we are moving on from Jerome Baker. We got a new DC. We are going with this guy Brooks. He fits what our DC wants to do. This is not the blitzing linebacker type that Jerome Baker excelled at. This is a legitimate off-ball linebacker. This is an old-school legitimate linebacker. And quite frankly, this is one of the biggest needs the Miami Dolphins have had on defense for a few years now. He tore his ACL in 2022. Other than that, no injury concerns. But everybody's got some kind of injury history when they come to the Miami Dolphins, don't they, right? He's a middleman in the field. He's going to be the quarterback of the linebacker core. In 4 NFL seasons with the Seahawks, 513 tackles. This is our guy. He's going to be next to David Long. He's replacing Jerome Baker, who I think Jerome Baker was a solid team guy, a quiet lunch pail, do your job guy. I never hated Jerome Baker. I didn't understand the hate, but I never loved Jerome Baker's game. Jerome Baker was best utilized in the Brian Flores system where you're sending a lot of pressures all the time, and he can rush a gap and try to get to the pass thrower and make a play that way. Jordan Brooks is a linebacker who can do a lot more sideline to sideline. And I think he's going to improve the play of our defense in general. You need linebackers in the middle of the field that can close gaps quickly, that can get to the ball, that can sniff out guys and plays, whether in the short passing game or in the running game, that can, stop another team's momentum in its tracks. And, we have been needing a guy like Brooks for a very long time. So, quite frankly, if our new DC wanted Brooks and Brooks was the guy they identified as the free agent that was going to make a difference for our team, I am all about the signing of Brooks, and I think that's a good signing. Now, back to the offensive side of the ball, we have Aaron Brewer, an offensive center. He's not one of the better centers, and people could spin that any way they want. Connor Williams is rehabbing a torn ACL. We don't know what he's going to do. We don't know if he's going to, come back to us whether he's going to explore the market. We don't know if the market's waiting to see how his rehab goes. We don't know if he's waiting to see how his rehab goes so that he can improve his market, you know. But we go out and we sign Brewer. And I mean, he allowed 21 sacks over the past 3 seasons, the most among centers in that 3-season span. It's a 3-year deal. You know, this is where I'm telling you, the Jonnu Smith signing was good. But this is where I just have to remain skeptical. I have to remain skeptical. And the members are here chiming in. Phil, this guy's tape I've seen is rough. Nay, Greer, y'all more worried about the O-line than we are. Yeah, the members know what's up, and they know what I'm about to say. And I forgot to shout out my boy G is in the friggin' building, started his own live show. Let's give him some props. This guy is on a tear. This guy's coming up in the world. He likes Brooks. I like Brooks too. So here's my thing, and this is where I remain and retain my healthy skepticism of this organization, and where I maintain my healthy skepticism of the organization as a top-down problem that starts with Ross, goes down to Greer, and continues on and on and on. You are doing everything you can to revamp the defense, and I like the majority of the moves that you're making on the defensive side of the ball to revamp it, other than the AVG thing. And look, I hate to see Christian Wilkins go. I'll keep saying it, but the guy got paid too much money. But why are you trying to tell me, Dolphins, why are you once again pretending that the offense is set and good to go, and that the offense can be completely trusted, and we've got nothing to worry about with the offense? Because, again, down the stretch, in December, in January, as 72 and undefeated is saying, the offense has dropped the ball. The defense, despite guys who we don't think are the best, despite Vic Fangio apparently not knowing what he's doing with players, whether you believe that or not, I don't really believe a lot of it. Despite all the injuries, the defense was playing fine and up to par, and the offense was struggling. So why are you bringing in a guy like Aaron Brewer at center and pretending that that's all good? Pretending that with this O-line minus Hunt, who was one of our best, if not our best O-lineman, with an injury-prone Armstead, with a potentially injury-prone Wynn, who's a year older, that bringing in Aaron Brewer is okay because Butch Barry will work miracles and Tua is so damn good and McDaniel is a genius. It seems again like you're believing your own hype a little bit too much. That's what it seems like. And I don't quite get it. And I'm not being disingenuous. I mean, that's my honest take. I don't think the defense was the problem late in the year, other than the injuries. And even with the injuries, they held up their side of the bargain. They had a formidable showing against Kansas City. I don't see them as being the primary problem. I'm all good with revamping the defense. I just said it. I'm excited about what we're doing to try to get the defense a little tougher, a little more hard-nosed, and to get the defense starting off swinging from the beginning of the season, in stride in the beginning of the season, lockstep with an offense that I think is always good in September and October. I think we're doing the right thing by revamping the defense. I just am a little suspicious when you're not doing much with the offense. You want us to believe the offense is all good. And I don't know that that's the case. I think you need to do more on that offensive line. Now, do they have guys circled in the draft that they're confident, if they're going to spend their first pick or two on an offensive lineman, and it's a mauler, a guy that fits the scheme, who was a consensus top round pick, who's a consensus formidable upper echelon starter in this league, then fine. But if they're starting to draft defensive backs or something again and playing around and not investing in the O-line, then I got a problem with this Brewer signing and letting Hunt go, because I think that's a big problem. And two ears out there could act like they're confident too, but the first thing they're going to say if he struggles again late in the season is that we needed a better O-line. So don't tell me that it's not a problem. Don't tell me. And I don't want to hear excuses when Wynn gets hurt and Armstead gets hurt, and then we're down again. We're down O-linemen, and now we don't have as good of an O-line all of a sudden, and the offense doesn't look as crisp, because that's what happens in the league, attrition. And if you're going with guys who are prone to injury, you can expect injury. So don't pretend later that it was unexpected, and how is any team supposed to do well without their starting O-lineman when you knew there was a good chance your O-linemen weren't going to be up to snuff. This is where I maintain my healthy skepticism. And I've given pretty much a glowing review on almost every free agent so far as I've gone down this list. So it's not like I'm just a naysayer or a pessimist. I keep it real on this channel. This is an objective channel, which is why if you're watching now and you haven't subscribed, you should click subscribe right now. It's right here. I'll give you a second. Everybody click subscribe. I'll give you 1 second. Just click it. Moment of silence to click subscribe. Click subscribe. I'm keeping it real. So then you have Kendall Fuller, a cornerback, former Commander, signing a 2-year deal. This could be the other starting cornerback opposite Ramsey. Cam Smith remains to be seen. Was Vic Fangio just some obtuse, stubborn, uncompromising guy who simply wouldn't give Cam Smith a chance? Or was Cam Smith not really up to snuff in practice? Was Cam Smith not really living up to the hype? We'll soon see with this Fuller signing. He allowed 8 touchdowns last season as the nearest defender. Hill burned him, but Hill burns everybody. Washington had a terrible defense, which he was a part of. He's a serviceable corner, serviceable starting corner. Do I want him to be the answer? Probably not. But you got to do something at corner. If Cam Smith hasn't seen the field, if Xavier Howard is, leaving, which he is, you got to do something at corner on the other side of Ramsey. They go out, they get him. We'll see what he does. I think he's in the mix. I think anything can happen. As people are saying here about Greer and defensive backs, yeah, he's drafted some great ones. And he's drafted some really bad ones who never even really saw the field or made any impact. So I'd rather him sign somebody formidable, quite frankly, than try to draft. And if he drafts, it better not be a top couple rounds, because we need offensive linemen and some other pieces. So we'll see. Now, Q says that Cam Smith was a Vic Fangio draft pick. I find that hard to believe, because Vic Fangio apparently is the reason he never saw the field. So I don't know. I don't know why he would pick somebody and then completely relegate him to not playing at all. So we'll see. I don't see how that would have been Fangio's pick. I don't see how that's possible, actually. And yeah, Fuller, Fuller's okay. Anthony Walker, a linebacker, depth piece, might rotate with Brooks, might rotate with Long. He's an injury-prone guy. He's been placed on injured reserve each of the last 3 seasons. He played in only 28 of a possible 51 games. If it's a rotational role, it's not much of a risk, but he's not going to be somebody you could consistently count on. But that's another a depth piece linebacker. They must like his game. Weaver must like his game. It's another linebacker piece. They're trying to revamp the linebacker core. So this is what they're doing. But another guy with some injury history. So 1-year deal. Again, you're not married to him. You're not making a long-term investment. If they like him as a depth piece, as a rotational piece, that's their issue, and that's fine. Braxton Berrios re-signs with the team. 1-year deal, again, worth $3 million. I like Berrios. I think he has the potential to be kind of explosive, kind of reliable. I think the biggest thing with somebody like Berrios and with some of these other guys, quite frankly, deeper on the wide receiver chart is Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa have to get these guys more involved. Mike McDaniel has to draw up plays for these guys. Tua has to get these guys the ball, and they can't be fixated on Tyreek Hill hitting 2,000 yards because, as much as some people hate on like Wilson last year and some of these other players, when they were called upon, they did okay. And quite frankly, River Craycraft the year before was looking pretty good. And, these guys, when they're called upon, they get the ball and they do some things with the ball. But we're never looking at these guys because we're so fixated on running the entire offense through Tyreek Hill and then a little bit through Waddle, not even much, that by the time you get to the third and fourth guy, everybody's saying how much they suck. But I think it's more because the offense, the quarterback and head coach, aren't doing anything scheme-wise or otherwise to give them legitimate looks. So I like a Berrios coming back. I know the Dolphins, I think, were of the mindset that they would move on. I don't know that the market was so great for Berrios. I don't think he's anything special. I don't think he's anything terrible. I think it's a decent guy to bring back on a 1-year deal, and they bring him back. So now you got kind of defensive tackle by committee, the way we approached this free agency. You got Benito Jones, who was a Lion. He's on a 1-year deal. This is a low-risk move. Anthony Weaver might like him, must like him. He's a defensive line specialist, Weaver. He probably thinks he can develop this guy. 335 pounds, 6'1". Played 6 games for the Dolphins in 2020. He's not Christian Wilkins' replacement, but maybe Raekwon Davis he can try to replace and shore up our run defense. Decent committee defensive lineman, and that's who he is. And Carrie P makes a good point. I mean, and it's true. I mean, when you're throwing the ball in 2 seconds and when your accuracy and productivity gets worse, the longer it takes you to throw the ball because you're scanning the field and you're not the best at that, you're going to constantly be going to your 1 or 2 read, and these lower end, these receivers further down the depth chart are not going to be getting quality looks. And I don't think it's all their fault. I think that's the coach and the quarterback, and that's got to be looked at, and that's going to be cleaned up. Neville Gallimore, another defensive tackle. He's a 1-year deal as well. Look, they're trying to replace Christian Wilkins by committee. They're trying to sign as many defensive tackles as they can to try to see if the coaching staff can get the most out of these guys. Either one of these guys develops really well and one of these guys steps up, or a few of these guys step up, or simply by virtue of having so many of them in the rotation and keeping them fresh, and with the defensive scheme that has a good linebacking core for once, and diversified scheme with the linebackers and knows what they're doing with the linebackers, maybe the emphasis is not as much on the defensive linemen, especially on the interior, to make these impacts on the defensive side of the ball. And it looks like because of the new DC and because of the loss of Christian Wilkins, because his price was so high, the Dolphins have decided to try to go, a defensive tackle by committee approach. And I can't find fault in it because what else are you going to do? You cannot go out and do what you did with Ndamukong Suh. You can't do it even with a homegrown guy like Wilkins at that premium. You simply cannot soak that much money into defensive interior line. So if the Dolphins feel they need to do it by committee this year because of the loss of Christian Wilkins, that's just something they're going to have to do. These guys are on 1-year deals. If they don't work out, you move on. I still also think that Miami may be targeting 1 or 2 players in the draft that they think can work out, and that's going to come at a discount because they're rookies, and you ride out that rookie contract, maybe with another guy, with the potential of a Christian Wilkins or somebody like close to that. So I can't find fault with the defensive tackle by committee stuff. They re-signed Robert Jones to a 1-year deal. he's been a serviceable backup guy, a serviceable role player. I don't think he's been great really ever. But he's been serviceable. I don't think our line depth is bad. When you have these guys that were serviceable last year, and now you have them coming back, even if we see some injuries, even in Eichenberg, you get some things out of these guys, and I'm comfortable with our depth. I'm just not as comfortable with our starters. And just because I'm comfortable with our depth doesn't mean that I think I want to ride our depth the whole season if our starters who are injury prone go down too frequently. So, yeah, and Jones may be better than Liam, but I don't think Jones plays a lot of center. So Liam is probably still going to be your backup center / backup guard unless Connor Williams comes back. And now you have, then you have Brewer as the backup center. Now, Brewer as a backup center, I wouldn't mind, but it doesn't seem like that's the case, which is what scares me. And Carrie P makes a good point, man. Rebuild was going fine. The team decided to pivot in the middle of the rebuild and switch coaches. And now you have this weird extended rebuild. And the reason that we're doing this weird kind of soft reset here is because of that length of the rebuild, right? Like this rebuild should have came to fruition last year, the year before, and it almost did because we were a contender early in the year, but it didn't quite, right? So now you're running at the end of these guys' contracts and you can't afford to keep everybody, and now you have to do this soft reset. And the reason you have to do this soft reset is because you interrupted the rebuild halfway through, and there, by virtue of doing that, extended the rebuild a few years. So now it's not constant. It's not going the way it should. So kind of interesting. Jody Forston, tight end, 28-year-old, 3-time Super Bowl champion. Tyreek Hill and Kendall Fuller. He joins them in Miami. He tore his Achilles in 2021, but he returned in 2022 with only 9 catches. He missed the entire 2023 season. He's a guy thrown into the mix in the tight end room. We'll see, what kind of impact, if anything, he can make. Saron Neal, cornerback from Buffalo, a 1-year deal again. He'll be a special teamer. That's pretty much his thing. So how do I feel overall about this thing? How do you guys feel overall about this thing? It's obvious that we needed to shed some salary. It's obvious that we thought the defense should have a harder nose, more of an edge, play a different style. And it's obvious that we thought the defense should hit the ground running this year, early in the season, to bank wins. And it seems to also be obvious that this team, for whatever reason, this team feels that the offensive side of the ball, the quarterback, the personnel, the coaching, the philosophy is just fine. And I don't know if they really feel that it's just fine or if they're just trying to dangle distractions in the fan base's face to try to make the fan base believe that it's fine. I don't quite know. But I do know that I'm skeptical of the philosophy of completely reshuffling the defensive side of the ball and leaving the offense largely untouched and thinking that we've solved the problems that hindered us the last 2 years, when the problems that hindered us the last 2 years were an offensive side of the ball late in the season that was banged up, that was not good in bad weather, and that had a lot of trouble finishing the season on a high note and putting us in position to make a playoff run. That's what I'm worried about. And so the offseason's not over yet. The offseason is not over yet. And so, and Phil says, it was anything but fine when I was sitting in frozen KC in December. It was trash. Yeah. So the offseason's not over, and I'm curious about what else we do on the offensive side of the ball, specifically with the offensive line. And I'm obviously curious about Tua's contract. There's been so many murmurs out there, so much speculation, so many saying that Tua is going to get the bag, is going to get this big deal, yet no movement yet. And we keep hearing rumors. Oh, maybe it's going to be now that he's going to, get this. He's going to get 45. He's going to get 55. He's going to get this. He's going to get that. But no movement. I don't take that as a sign that the Dolphins are not going to extend him before the season starts. But I do take it as a sign that there's more moving around and going on in these negotiations and discussions than we are necessarily privy to. And the fact that the Dolphins have loaded up this contract so far with so many one-year deals leads me to believe that there may be in the cards a potential for a more impactful reset after this season if the Dolphins don't get to where they want to go this season. It seems painfully and patently and objectively obvious that the Dolphins are once again loading up for a shoot-your-shot season. To me, though, if you're not loading up with linemen who are going to stay healthy and, I just I don't know why you're completely overhauling the defense and you're not doing at least a significant overhaul on the offense. That I don't know. So, and when it comes to paying Tua over $50 million, if you think you could load up the defense with one-year guys, continue to go behind a shaky, injury-prone O-line where you lost probably your best interior O-lineman, and pay Tua that much money so that you're not going to be able to surround him ever with a much better O-line, then I question your entire philosophy. And I question your entire line that I should be excited for anything different this season. And I get that the offseason isn't over. I just said that the offseason isn't over. I mean, I said that. That's the caveat, right? That's the qualifier. The offseason isn't over yet. Yeah, you're right. The offseason is not over yet. I agree. And I'm waiting to see what happens the rest of the offseason. 100% I am. But as of now, they've completely overhauled the defense. And some of the moves I like a lot. And the offense, they've signed a good tight end. And pretty much, I'd say, got worse by attrition, because if you swap Connor Williams for the new center, Brewer, that's a downgrade. If you let Hunt walk, which did, that's a downgrade. Wynn is even because you had him, but he's got injury issues. Armstead is even because you had him, but he's got injury issues. Barrios is back. Okay. You didn't get yet a workhorse, and nothing against Raheem Mostert. The guy, I love Raheem Mostert's game, but you can't. And he would tell you different because he's a football player who's got a lot of heart and who's an absolute beast. But you can't count on him to be that much of a workhorse all season, especially behind an offensive line that isn't great, especially in run blocking. And you can't expect him to go out there and stay healthy and that resilient for another year. And your running back core in general, you got some bigger guys. They're mostly small. You didn't go out and get a workhorse. You still can. The offseason's not over. But I just remain skeptical of an organization trying to sit there and tell me, look at all we did to the defensive side of the ball. Look at everything we did to the defensive side of the ball. Look at everything when the defense wasn't the problem. That doesn't mean I don't like the defensive overhaul. I went through every signing, and I like almost every single one of the signings, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think getting tougher on defense, getting more hard-nosed on defense is a great move for the Miami Dolphins in general. So don't get me wrong. I'm happy with the overhaul in the defense. Just don't try and tell me that's what was needed as opposed to doing something on the offensive side of the ball. Because that's just disingenuous. That's the same old Miami Dolphins narrative we've seen for so many years now. Look over here, not over here. If you go out and pay Tua over $50 million, I'm not going to be satiated or feeling great just because you got a bunch of defensive guys on one-year deals. If you can't figure out a way to surround Tua with more talent and stability on offense, that defense isn't going to mean a whole hell of a lot. Because we saw that last year, where the defense was holding its weight later and the offense literally couldn't move the ball. There were a couple games, 2-3 games, 2-3 games where the offense was absolutely inept. You could point to all the gaudy stats you want in the beginning of the year. The end of that season, and that's 2 seasons in a row, and it was painfully evident last season, painfully evident at the end of last year. Painfully evident that the offense was not just under par, not just not great. The offense was downright bad. Inept, impotent, couldn't do anything. Couldn't do anything. And maybe holding their weight is not good enough, Sea Devil, but the offense sucking, not even holding their weight is even worse. That's why I'm wondering why we're only completely revamping and rebuilding the defense and kind of basically leaving the offense intact, if not letting guys go and replacing them with weaker guys as if we can get away with it. I'm skeptical of that. 100% I'm skeptical of that. And unless we do something more in the offseason, I'm going to remain skeptical of that. Because it just doesn't seem to make a whole hell of a lot of sense. It just doesn't. Thank you, Nene. And guys, by the way, become a member. Like the members in here. You get your comments highlighted all the time. You get preferential treatment when we have call-ins. You get to the front of the line. I do members-only content as well. I do a members-only column that I'll start up again this offseason, a written column that you can find exclusively on this channel. So consider becoming a member of the channel. If you haven't done so yet, click subscribe. Click the like button. Join the Fury fam. And make sure you're tuning in to Shake on Thursdays. I'm going to try to do this Monday show every other Monday, every Monday or so. And this, by the way, this show is also available as an audio podcast. The Monday show is available as an audio podcast on all of your favorite podcasting mediums. Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Audible. You can find this audio podcast and you can listen to Dolphins content as a podcast. So make sure you sign up and subscribe to the podcasts as well. Now, just to touch on the Tyreek Hill situation, this is the type of thing. I don't really care what a player's lifestyle is like. I don't care what their belief system is like. And thanks, Sea Devil. I appreciate it, my brother. I don't care what a player is really doing off the field if they're a good player on the field, unless it's, blatantly immoral or blatantly criminal. But when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's highly productive, he's one of the best receivers in the league, but he's constantly talking, Greer is sneaky doing this. Tua's sneaky doing that. You guys need to relax. You guys this, you guys that. And he's getting married, but he's got like 3 women pregnant in the same year he's getting married. So how many different women is he sleeping with? And then you come out with this report recently about this domestic situation with his wife. And, I find that relationship in general interesting. It's none of my business, but it's like, she's like the only one that doesn't have a kid with him, but she's married to him, right? So like, she must be kind of smart because she could marry him, get in business deals with him, have the little marriage situation with the finances, and if anything happens, she could be okay, but doesn't have the kid. Like, is she the smarter one or what? Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it, my brother, a lot. But my thing with Tyreek is he's not Antonio Brown because he's not crazy. But as you get older and your effectiveness on the field is not as much as it used to be, is not as good as it used to be, and these distractions pile up on you, it's only a matter of time sometimes until one of these situations, these domestic situations, these court situations, these just bad energy situations catch up to you. And we don't want to be in a situation where a guy is so distracted off the field or is, God forbid, suspended, and we're stuck with this huge contract as his productivity on the field is falling because he's getting just straight up older. And I don't know why the house was set on fire. I could only imagine that one of the kids was acting out because there's a lot going on in this family situation. And that house fire was interesting. But then he knocks the lady down. She's suing him at the flag football game or whatever it was. This wife now, he says he didn't file for divorce, but he did file for divorce. And if he's asking her to sign a post-nuptial, basically sign this paper after we already got married, even though I didn't make you sign it before we got married, that leads me to believe he was trying to divorce her. And she's like, F you, I didn't sign it then. You want to divorce me, but we're going to court. And he got pissed. Then you had some situation where apparently he took somebody's seat like at a club or something, then got up. He smacked the dude in the head at the dock. I'm not getting on his bad side because he's a great player and he does a lot of good stuff for the community too. But here's the thing with the Miami Dolphins. One, Richard, I don't think so. I don't think it's just because he's a big name. I mean, there's guys that have affairs. Dan Marino had an affair. But this guy is running all over the place like Antonio Cromartie to the point that it's what is he, Nick Cannon? I mean, it's too much. What do you need to do that for? And then forget just running around. He's smacking guys at boat docks. I'm just saying. We've seen the Miami Dolphins before. Look at Richie Incognito. When something goes awry, they don't do a good job of reining their guys in. They don't do a good job with the media publicity. And I wonder, and I'm scared sometimes, that he's going to get himself into trouble and it's going to become a distraction to the team. It's going to become a distraction to the team. And it could derail this thing because this franchise, I've been telling you all, and I don't know what it's going to take. But the one constant on this team, through all the controversy, all the craziness, all the nonsense, everything that's gone on, is this right here. This guy. This guy does not run a tight ship. This guy runs one of the loosest ships ever. This ship is every little wave that hits the side, it's cranking and creaking, and the bolts are falling into the water. This is the guy who had a coach snorting coke off a table, sending the video of him snorting coke to a hooker. This is the guy who had the Jonathan Martin, Richie Incognito situation going so far that it got out to the press and got way out of control when it probably could have been kept and controlled in-house and mediated in-house and figured out. I don't trust. Somebody's got to tell Tyreek to just chill. I don't care if he wants to go around and sleep with whoever he wants to sleep with. That's his business. I agree. But how about you don't impregnate every woman you sleep with? And if you do, that's still your business. Fine, I agree. But how about you keep it quiet? And if you're going to impregnate so many women, then at least don't go smack dudes at boat docks. Don't knock chicks on their ass in a recreation game and break their legs. And stop talking to fans on Twitch about free agency. Like, pick one. You want to impregnate everybody in Dade County? Then how about stay off Twitch for a week? You want to stay on Twitch? Then why don't you just not knock the big chick down in the flag football game? I mean, pick one. My biggest fear about Tyreek is, I hate to say this, I feel like he's chasing stats, fun, celebrity, sunshine, and money instead of chips at this point in his career. And you have to look at a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is a team who let him go and has won 2 Super Bowls since. 2 Super Bowls since they let him go. Doesn't mean he was a problem, but it means he isn't necessarily a vital solution. We love stats as Miami Dolphins fans. This fan base not only loves stats, they love something else. They love Tua stats. Tyreek Hill gives Tua a ton of great stats. Now, Tua gives Tyreek stats too. It's not all just Hill. And it's Ross's fault, Jay, because the leader sets the culture. Like I set the culture on this channel, right? If this channel has a certain personality that all the different hosts operate on, if we have a certain decorum, a certain format, it permeates and radiates from my leadership. It permeates from the way that people see me as somebody who holds them accountable for what they do on this channel. Channels and organizations take on different personalities based on their leadership. And this organization, since Ross has been here, has had certain themes that are not necessarily good themes. There are a lot of controversy, a lot of things getting out into the press, a lot of problems, a lot of disorganization. That permeates from leadership. It starts at the top. And I agree, Richard, that the quarterback in Kansas City is maybe one of the best definitely one of the best quarterbacks of all time, maybe even the best quarterback of all time. Time will tell. And well said, Q, and thanks, True Blazer. I agree the quarterback makes a difference. But if a team it's hard to win chips. And if a team is able to shed a player as good statistically and talented as Tyreek and still win 2 Super Bowls, it just says something. I'm not saying it says that Tyreek's not good. It just says something. And I haven't seen Tyreek. He is the only touchdown pass we had against Kansas City in the playoffs. And he's been brilliant for 2 years. But when I talk about this team and what it lacks, and I've talked about this since last offseason, since the end of the season, I have discussed that this team seems to lack that killer instinct, that will to win, that dog. And I don't mean tough as opposed to finesse. I mean that Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, if I don't win, I'm going to smash something. If I don't get a competitive edge on you, I'm not playing up to my potential. if I don't see winning as the be-all, end-all while I'm on that field for those 60 minutes, I don't even belong on the field anymore. Patrick Mahomes, as much of a pain in the ass as he is, and he's become more of a whiner as his career has gone on, worse than Tom Brady. But if there's one thing that he and Tom Brady have in common, it's that they are such a pain in the ass because they are so obsessed and fixated on winning that they will stop at nothing to try to gain a competitive advantage to win the game. Whether it's milking the refs, whether it's complaining, whether it's not letting a loss go for a few minutes, even if it looks unsportsmanlike, they care about winning above everything else. And the Miami Dolphins, especially on offense, seem like every time there's a bad play or a bad game or a drop pass or a missed opportunity, it's always ho-hum, okay, well, all well, we'll live, we'll fight another day. That comes from McDaniel, that comes from Tua, that comes from Tyreek. And here's why I'm bringing up Tyreek in this equation. If Tyreek Hill is really not hunting that hard for a chip, but is chasing fun and sun and stats, we are going to have an uphill battle to climb to win a Super Bowl, because Tyreek Hill is by far the best player on the offense. Tyreek Hill is by far the most leader and integral part of the team on the offense. So if that player, who's the most integral player, who's the most talented player, who's the most impactful player on the entire offense, if that player does not have that dog in him, that unrelenting will and obsession with winning, then that is going to affect the culture and mentality of the entire team. I'm not making a proclamation. I'm not saying 100% that that's all he cares about. I'm just saying, if he doesn't have that absolute dog and want to win like that, we have a problem. And maybe it takes somebody like Tua to start developing that obsession with winning. Tua should start keeping receipts. And Richard, see, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. I definitely don't disagree with you. I was just getting to that. So good point. Tua's got to have that edge. Tua's got to stop with his ho-hum, things will get better. Tua says he's keeping receipts. Well, over time, one of the receipts that everybody keeps the most in the conversation of who the best quarterback is or who the top echelon quarterbacks are is how many championships, how many playoff games, how many Super Bowls they've won. Tua, I really hope, Canes, what up, my bro? Tua, I really hope, starts to really develop that dog and that anger. And I hope he starts to really get out and go with that unrelenting edge, because we're going to need it to win a chip. That's what carries you through those moments of adversity. And we haven't seen it from this offensive group yet, which is why I'm curious as to why they're not doing a lot of overhaul in the offense. They're not doing a lot with the offense. Trading, yeah, use a lot of assets. I'm not there. But if this season, Greer is loading up with a lot of one-year deals, especially on defense. If this season ends the same way that the last two seasons have ended, where we completely fall apart at the end and we make absolutely no noise at all and go out with a complete whimper, then they're going to have to completely overhaul this team. And even if they keep Tua and they keep Tua at a premium, at a high price, they're going to need to revamp the entire team around him. Because if this team goes out with a whimper again, then something is wrong culturally and philosophically with the team, because the talent and the numbers are there. And 72, you say it well, because we're revamping the defense. Who's carrying the offense? They haven't made a lot of moves. The offense has not been able to will itself through adversity late in the year. Crazy Dolphin, what up? They have not been able to will themselves to victory late in the year. So why are we not even touching that side of the ball? There should be some changes. Hopefully they come in the draft. Hopefully there's more signings. Hopefully maybe there's a trade. We'll see what happens. Nene says Tua is too passive-aggressive. Even Reek said he doesn't like constructive criticism. Soft. We'll stop talking to people. And I think, that's a double-edged sword, because I don't know that Tua loves constructive criticism. At the same time, Mike McDaniel is so unwilling to give the criticism, according to Tua himself. He needs to go to assistant coaches to get some hard, tough love. That's a Mike McDaniel thing, too. You don't have to be the hardest guy. You don't have to yell and scream. You don't have to be Bill Parcells. Fine. You don't have to be Don Shula. Fine. But you got to have some accountability. You got to have some accountability. And again, what are we seeing with completely overhauling a defense that gave it their all at the end of the season despite injury? Again, I'm fine with overhauling the defense, and I like the moves. I like the moves as they're overhauling the defense. I like the moves. But what is the message that's being sent? What is the message that's being sent? If the offense, who are the ones who drop the ball, are not being held accountable because there's very little overhaul on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense who busted their ass is completely being purged. What message does that send? That doesn't send a message of accountability. And I think what the offense on this team needs most is accountability going forward. And Richard, you make some good points. You make some good points. And if we better overhaul some more of that offensive line. We better make some more moves on that offensive side of the ball. The defense could be awesome, and I want them to be awesome. I'm excited to see them get tenacious and get tough and hit the ground running. I'm excited. I'm very excited for it. Very excited for it. Very excited. But unless that offense gets a tweak or two, we're going to wind up in the same place we've been. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on this front office and this team all offseason to see what moves we make, what tweaks we do, what screw we tighten, what pressure we apply to get us where we need to go, which is finally over the hump to win a damn playoff game, because it's been way too long. Way too long. And I agree, Jason. I mean, I agree, And Jason, you make a very good point. Another member in the chat here. Jason, another member. Become a member, guys. But Tua is going to be in trouble with this O-line, going to be scary. That's what I'm saying. The O-line has actually taken a step back, in my opinion. The O-line has taken a step back. How can we be comfortable with that? Unless we do something to bolster and fix that offensive line, I can't be confident going forward. Oh, I'm not saying the team, Richard, should be content with one win. I'm just saying we want to see a damn win for once. The team should be looking at the Super Bowl, but not cockily. Last year, they're looking at the Super Bowl. They had no business looking at it. They couldn't even get through December. But I agree with you. And you know what, John? You're right. Both teams did take a step back. You know what? You're right. You're right. Both lines did. Both lines did. But I think the defense might have been inevitable because Wilkins got paid so much damn money. But the offense, it's like they're letting it happen. Let's see what they do. Let's see how the rest of the offseason turns out. But if you're not at least a little bit skeptical, you're not at least a little bit, healthily skeptical, I don't know what you're looking at, because this franchise has done this over and over and over again. So, and the Fins tailgate is in the building. Thank you, my brothers. You guys better be watching. Not Fins tailgate. I'm a avid watcher of the Fins tailgate. I freaking love the Fins tailgate. But if you don't have the healthy skepticism, like I'll leave you with this today. I'll leave you with this. If you don't like the moves on the defense and you're not at least intrigued to see what they're doing, you're just being a hater, because there's some legitimate moves on this defensive side of the ball. And there are some realities that had to happen where guys had to leave because we simply couldn't afford them. We simply couldn't afford to pay everybody at the inflated premiums that other teams were willing to pay them. We simply could not. So if you don't understand at least some of the tactical advantages and reasons why we did certain signings on the defensive side of the ball, then you're just being a hater. At the same time, if you don't have a healthy skepticism of this team and franchise who has decided to completely overhaul the defensive side of the ball and basically give the offensive side of the ball a pass and act like nothing happened, then you're also just delusional and you're a cuck sunshine fan, because there's a lot of reason to be skeptical of this franchise, and there's a lot of reason to be skeptical if they don't make any more significant moves on the offensive side of the ball, specifically on the offensive line. Specifically on the offensive line. And Richard, you know decent teams, and I agree with you. I'm embarrassed too. But look, we can't be down on everything. We can't be down on the entire state of the entire franchise in friggin' March right now. We can keep it real. We can analyze. We can discuss. We can just deal with reality. And right now, from the defensive side, I'm giving us a B plus. I'll give a B on our free agency so far. I would have liked to keep AVG. I don't love the center signing at all. I don't like letting Hunt walk, although he was paid a lot of money. I like a lot of the defensive signings. I like the Poyer signing. I like the Barrett signing. If you got to replace AVG because he wanted to go home. I like the linebacker core. I like the free agency so far, but I want to see more on the offensive side of the ball. And don't piss on my head and tell me it's rain with this offense. Don't make a fool out of me. Don't make a fool out of me. And part of this, and they say it on the tailgate a lot, and they say it in a couple shows. A lot of the problem with this franchise is the fan base. The fan base is going to get overexcited and start to believe their own hype, the gaslighting, that the defense was the big problem and that with a revamped defense, we're ready to take on the world, when the actual problem was the offense, and we took a step back on offense so far on the offensive line. You've got to do something about the offensive line. Don't lie to me. Don't make a fool of me. I'll still be there cheering for the team. I'm still excited, especially for September, October, because September, October is when this team is the best anyway. And if you get a defense that hits the ground running and is a tougher defense, we could bank more wins early in the year. But it's still not going to get us a deep run in the playoffs unless this offense, this quarterback, this head coach, these receivers find that edge, dig deep, find that competitive advantage, find that dog, and execute at a high level in adverse situations late in the year while they're banged up. It's not going to go anywhere. And I'm still curious about this Tua contract. I've heard 45. I've heard 55. No one knows for sure. And if it was a done deal, it would have happened already because it would have been done. So I'm really, really interested to see where these contract negotiations go with Tua. Really interested. But guys, that pretty much does it for me today. I'm happy to be back with you guys. I will be back all off season. If you haven't done so yet, click subscribe. Right now, click subscribe. Become a member of the channel. Support the channel. Your support goes a very long way. Make sure you're tuning into the Fins Tailgate. All my boys over there with great content. Make sure you're tuning into all the other content creators out there. Make sure you're tuning into In the Blender with Shake this Thursday and every Thursday right here on the Phin-Addict Fury channel. And this show will be available as an audio podcast on every major platform out there. Remember, if you become a member, you get access to exclusive content, a bunch of perks on the live shows, and you get access to my written column, which is available exclusively on YouTube in the community tab. And I will be back either this coming Monday or the following Monday. We will do this every Monday or every other Monday. I'm not going anywhere this offseason. We're going to continue to hold this team and this franchise accountable. We're going to continue to give you guys good content and fill your afternoons with some good Dolphins talk. We're going to continue to bring our unique style and objectivity to the community, and we are going to continue to be here for you guys and to contribute in a positive way. So really, really happy to have you guys. Jason, thank you, my brother. And then Jason Myers, thanks for joining, man. I can't wait for you to join and be a member, official member of Fury Fam. And I'll give you a personal shout out when you do, and you'll have access to some of these bells and whistles. So it's very, very appreciated. And stay tuned. We got a lot more coming on this channel, and hopefully this season we'll have a lot more coming too. I got some cool ideas too. I talked to Shake with another show or two, or maybe even on this show, we can kind of add some bells and whistles that'll make it more interactive and a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But until next time, man, fins up, and let's keep an eye on free agency. Let's follow all the latest news. If news breaks, check this channel and see if I've given an update. I try to check in as much as I can. It's been a pleasure spending this afternoon with you guys. I'll catch you later. Larry K, out.
I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz